all of my interests were on the entrepreneurship side. How entrepreneurship drives development to the role of the private sector in that, or some of the new will become.
In this episode of our CEO series, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Lisa Lake, CEO of the Lake Group of Companies, and it was such an awesome conversation, one that I think you'd find great value in as you listen to it. Lisa and the group has been working and representing brands that you're very quite familiar with, but you probably didn't know were a part of the group. And of course, Lisa being someone who doesn't normally do interviews, I thought it was very interesting to hear hear about her history, hear about the passing of the torch from her grandparents, all the way down to her, hear her passion for, the youth and the development of our country, and an overall great conversation, one I think you'll find, again, as I said, great value in. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below this video. Let me know if you have any questions for Lisa. Well, thanks again for watching. Like this video, subscribe to this channel if you're new. So let's start by just finding out a little bit about you. So who is Lisa?
Good question. We will constantly differ depending on the day. I guess defining Lisa, I guess the first thing that I think of is kind of through my relationships, because relationships are very important to me. So I would start off by describing myself as a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and a friend. I have lots of friends, but I'm a very kind of close-knit type of person. So who puts a lot of effort into relationships. And so I know that I can't stretch myself too thin when it comes to that. So I think saying that, that's the relationship side, when we get in terms of the titles, which are less important to me. Maybe group CEO, chairman, board member. I don't like the term philanthropist. I think contributor is better. I think it just happens a connotation that does not feel right to me. But contributor to national development and to issues that are important to me. Is a big part of my life as
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of get that journey, right? So those titles that you just mentioned, right? Board member, CEO, etc. What was it that led you down that path? So maybe bring us back to Lisa as a teenager or early adult. What really, brought you here?
Oh, I understand the man.
We have a lifetime.
Well, I would start out by saying where I am now is not really where I expected to be at all. So maybe that will become evident in my journey. So Lisa, as a child, grew up in Kingston, and we're sitting here in L.E.A.R.N at the moment. This is my home, and I think it's my forever home. I really moved to L.E.A.R.N about 15 years ago, and I have to say, much of them take a bit of Kingston.
It's a different piece, definitely. It felt less aggressive to us in terms of even just the traffic.
Well, we have quite a bit of that, but I find I got to go into Kingston often for work, and by the time I reached onto the boulevard, my stress started to come to my shoulders. And we're sitting here.
So it's not me.
No.
It's not me.
Okay. We're sitting here by the water here in Montego Bay, and I feel a lot more there than when I where I haven't had the benefits of both the mountains and the water. Everything. But so that's again just to say, my childhood was at Kingston. I went to high school at Immaculate. I know it's very important for Jamaicans, where people go to high school and
it deserves.
It's like a defining,
Yes, it says a lot about who you are.
Yeah, 100%. Left there and went to boarding school in the US, and then transitioned to university. The one thing to mention is that when I was in high school as Immaculate, I took an economics class and absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it. fast forward, which I'll get to during my undergrad and graduate degree in economics. So like, don't give up if you don't like.
The first impression is not.
No. Yeah. And I both for the boarding school and for the university that I went to, I do interviews for people that are, like students in Jamaica looking to go to those schools. I do those interviews sometimes as in person here in Jamaica, so that I am not travel overseas to do those interviews. But I'm also chairman of the board of the school here in Jamaica. What I find so interesting is when you ask students, what's your favorite class? They give you an answer, and then ask me, who's your favorite teacher? And it's 100%. No, 100% the same. So to me, it's a real indication of how teachers can really influence how the material comes alive or doesn't. I feel very sure.
That connection, but you're right, because when I think back to my favorite teacher in primary school, that was also my favorite subject.
I have not yet come across any child that has, or any student that has answered that differently. So I think it's really important. So I'm the granddaughter of, so I mentioned in terms of relationships, grandparents as well. I can see picture of my two grandmothers here. The one on the left is the founder of our family business, who unfortunately just passed away last year. And the one on the right is my maternal grandmother, who is 94 and a math teacher, and just stopped teaching math during the COVID. So more on that later. Sorry, I've already gone like I want to miss.
I love math, so yeah.
But so many people, to the point that I was making, is that she's continued to teach math into her 90s because she gets such a drive of when the material comes alive to the student. Like she can literally, light bulb comes off and she lives for the light bulb or lives for that light bulb, right? And so I think it's being a teacher is such an amazing profession for that reason, to be able to create those light bulb moments. But there are a lot of kids, and in particular girls, and this is very deep to me, or meaningful to me, that are led to believe from early that they're bad at math, and they just carry that through their life to say, no, math is not my thing, and it really has effects later on. I mean, yes, everybody has their strengths and areas of opportunity.
But you create a mental block.
Create a mental block, which not just can translate into your professional, but also your personal life. Like there are women who perhaps are staying in relationships longer than that are serving them because they've not felt comfortable managing their own finances.
Wow, yes.
I don't know how I got there from the childhood, but let me go back.
It's okay, there are lots of...
Yeah, so I was mentioning, I started off by talking about economics and not spiking into very school. I went to university in Massachusetts, outside of Boston, at a school called Tufts University, where I studied both double major in economics and architecture, architectural studies. I really couldn't. From my freshman year, I realized that I didn't want to be an architect at all, but I really enjoyed architectural history, architectural theory. So I continued to do that major in addition to economics, which everybody thought was a really weird combination.
Sounds weird.
And it is when I heard that question, it was just, I'm just learning how to make, I'm just learning how to make efficient and effective housing. I'm going to be cost-effective or that word. They make sure we tune into. From there, I left Boston. I went to New York for my first job, which was at an economic consulting firm.
Okay, so you got a
yes.
here. Okay.
So, but that was on the micro side. So what the firm does still is that they are hired by law firms to serve as expert witnesses in various litigation. So my practice was in intellectual property. So my job was, if, for example, Coke was suing Pepsi over patent infringement for like zero-calorie treat, let's just as an example. It was a lawyer's job to prove whether or not that infringement happened. It was my job to say, if it happened, to calculate this into the damages that would be due to our authority. Yeah.
Sounds like an interesting job.
It was. I loved it in that. I'm still in touch with my boss from that. So it came to my wedding, however many years later. It was interesting because it touched on some of the things that I've realized are of interest to me. One is it was such a variety. Like I one day I was working on patented for medical stents that go in your heart. Another day I would be doing it for baby food. Another day I would be doing it for something. So I learned so much about so many different industries, but it was also very detail oriented. Like, if you're going into court and saying this company owes this company, $1,374,006, you have to be able to list why. You have to be able to justify all of your assumptions and show detail. And that job also taught me what a skill that I really hope everybody gets to a point in time, but I think we have our talking about is not right. Except, like, I think.
You're saying that's keep talking.
I don't know. There are a few problems that I could have come up in my life that cannot be solved with a spreadsheets.
My friends Joe
told me all the time, and use a spreadsheet for everything. We can plotting all these pictures are put on the wall, and like, okay, you can just Excel for that.
It does everything we need.
And more. So I really do think that it should be an integral part of the curriculum for every single, not even high school, first school. So that job was great, and living in New York City at that stage of my life was really exciting. But I knew I never wanted to stay there forever, and I knew that my that avenue of economics was very micro, and my interests were more macro. Like, I've always been driven toward by economic development. So I started thinking about graduate school, focusing on economic development programs, and ended up going.
No architecture.
No, they did away with that a long time ago. And ended up applying for and getting accepted into a program at Harvard at Kennedy School that is international. So it was a very rigorous program. Only 60 students, of which 80% were international, which one of the benefits from that is that we're still so close-knit and have friends all over the world. And it was a 2-year program. The first year was like a PhD in economics. I look back at my notebooks, which I'm a note taker, I am a note keeper. I look back at my notebooks and I can't understand what I mean. It's like Greek letters for pages and pages and pages. Yes, it's nothing that I didn't go into that field, but I think you'll see this whole theme kind of fashioning. So the first year was a crash course in PhD in economics, and the second year is when you got to take your electives. And all of my interests were on the entrepreneurship side. How entrepreneurship drives economic and the role of the private sector in that, or some of the new role. So that was from that. I actually, when I graduated from that, I got a job at a firm that was based in Boston, but did consulting projects related to economic development all over the world. They haven't had a project here in Jamaica. So I moved back home in 2006, really graduated, and started working for this firm. It was called On the Frontier. And my job was, at that point in time, the EU had started to pull back the preferential pricing that Jamaica had on sugar. And as a result of doing that, they put some money aside for investigating alternative industries to go into. And one industry that was identified was the Scotch wine industry. So my job was to get an investment portfolio for the Scotch wine industry, and so again, didn't know anything about Scotch wine, but I know a lot more now, and it was interesting to try to put that together. But one of the things that came up for me in that study, which I still think about a lot today, is that Jamaica has so much going for it, but sometimes we rely too much on our own hand. or what I mean by that, like everybody knows it's holistic stuff, right? Like anybody who has tasted it can recognize that it has qualities about it that in my mind and in many people's mind are superior. But just because this is could be considered a favorite and that there's demand for it doesn't mean that we have organized ourselves well enough to meet that. Like, so it could be the best part as well.
That or other areas as well, because we talk about that in athletics. We take advantage of that in terms of, I can think of so many things that
And so, you know, I'm really proud Jamaican, but in some cases I'm disappointed on our ability to make good on the talents and gifts that we have, because sometimes we're just too complacent and say just because we are the best, we don't have to work for it. But you may have the best Scotchman of football, but if you're not delivering in full and on time and of the best quality, as I'm just using it as an example, then it doesn't really matter, because the market will not choose you.
So I've always thought that so most recently we've seen, for example, there was the issue with the minister mentioning that all ride sharing apps are just fine. And I thought about that first. I thought it was maybe a little bit premature, but I thought, you know, there's so many, same point we're talking about, that there's so many opportunities to develop systems to allow industries to thrive.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we fall short sometimes, the system.
Yeah.
There's no structure to support the things that we do well. So our entrepreneurs, there's no system or structure to really help us move forward. In terms of our sports, we see where it's when, for example, I think it's Sunshine Girls, the netball team. Yes, the netball team, we'll see them do really well, and then there are talks about them not getting enough support. There's no system to ensure that there's always funding, there's resources, etc. So I think that's what I see anywhere, or that's how I think about it, where there's no system in place.
And it has to start from early. I mean, like, we drop on their ball at so what you said a while ago is really just a perfect segue into where I went 2 steps after, which was to found the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship. But before I get there, on the sports side, this is also my husband has recently taken over as chair of the L.E.A.R.N here in Pan. So I've always been a big fan of football. I know it's immaculate. You see in my father's team, it's a Learning Cup matches all the time, and he's a proud Georgians one. And so I've always been interested in football. I know I have a son, he was a football fanatic, had taken him all over the world to try and hone his skills. And I mentioned it was because learning more about if we ever want to become better than we are, it has to start from the youth and structure around the youth program to being good in that. And I think again that's another part where it isn't system, but at the time we need to be able to promote it. It needs an investment, but not just at the last minute when everybody's scrolling to go into the wall.
There needs to be continuity. So, we have a great run, somebody does really well, we have this massive success.
Everybody's on a bandwagon after the fact, as opposed to investing in it to be there. Yeah.
Well, we're not going to go there. But, okay, so let's talk about, so before we go to Branson, I wanted to just get a little bit about the personal side, families that you mentioned, your husband. So tell us about your family life.
Sure.
What's that like?
Okay. So this December we'll make 14 years of being married.
Congratulations.
My husband, Yanni Epstein, confuses everybody as it didn't change her name, and so it's Lake, and so it's Epstein, and so it's whatever. So we've been married for 14 years, and I've known him my whole life. We were childhood friends, but never in a million years today. Together. But it's one of the things that did not, and he thinks like that is too calculated. So it wasn't part of my.
You can't ever be too
But
clever.
this is why we're good at work. This is why we're good partners and balance each other out, because I'm very calculated and he's very shy by the seat of the capacity. So we kind of it works in that way, right? They complement each other. And I think for me, we're both business partners. We're sitting there at Hightel, which is a company that we founded together, but he runs, and his expertise is in call centers and as Phil is doing this spectacular role. And so we're business partners, we're also life partners, parenting partners. So we have 2 kids. One that is 11, going on 40. And we'll see her name is Hell, and our son in Stephen, he's 9. They're 17 months apart, but I think pretty close together. But they're the blessing of our lives really. See, my daughter's had to work. Even though my whiteboard is not filled with to-do list, but messages from my kids that I can't bear to erase.
No, because even in the mess that our son creates, it's like it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, talk to me about the partnership, right?
Yeah.
Partners in business, partners in marriage. What is that like? And this is all for me.
It's complicated. But it is beautiful that it's complicated. I mean, so what's good, what works for us, and I think different couples, you're a part of us, the like team as well, and pleasure meeting you, like wisely. Part of it work. Different people will be works differently. For us, it's a good thing that we are. It's a good thing that we're working day-to-day separate businesses. I don't think it would work as well if we were working day-to-day in the same business. But we're working day-to-day in separate businesses, and interestingly, I say this all the time, like the call center, the BPO industry in Jamaica is oftentimes is one of the lead employers.
Yes.
And it's one of the first employers. One of our businesses, and I don't realize I only into what the scope on the European area, but one of the large parts of our is in QSR business, which is also one of the first employers for many people, right? And I see that as both a tremendous opportunity and a tremendous responsibility as being the lively industries as the first employer for people leading. And what I mean by that is that I think we're their first experience that sets them up for understanding what work, what business should and should be, or what shouldn't be. And so even if they don't stay with us forever, because of course when they'll do it, we have a responsibility to giving them up the foundation that they can then take and use wherever they want after. And where it comes to the responsibility is that being in this position, it's very obvious to us, unfortunately, the way that our academic and education system is failing all the people.
That word again, system, right?
Yeah, it's just, to see that people are, coming up with high school diplomas, some of them even have subjects, but some basic, but it's really, it just shows that we're pushing people through the system.
It's almost like you've gotten the requirement, but there's some gaps there, and you're wondering where something went wrong.
And we have where the responsibility is that we have a responsibility to step in at that point in time. We can argue as to why the system has failed, but the reality is we are where we are, and if we as a company don't take an active interest in trying to close that gap ourselves, I don't know where we're going to be in a couple of years. So we're talking about partnership.
Yeah, we're talking about So you're saying that you work in separate businesses.
So we work in separate businesses, office on the other side of the wall. But because even though we're completely separate businesses, completely separate industries, there's a lot of similarities And you'll see that even with entrepreneurship, right? Somebody that's running a multi-billion-dollar company with thousands of employees sometimes has very similar challenges to the micro entrepreneur that has 3 employees, right? And so there's a lot of similarities to what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So we can vent to each other, we can bounce things off of each other and say, this is how I solved it on my side, and this is how I'm looking to solve it on my side. And we really work together in that way. So, but as entrepreneurs ourselves, we're very similar, and so sometimes it can be like, we both of us can feel very strongly about our position, which I would just say communication is critical and trust is critical, because even if we don't agree, I know that his intentions are good and he knows that my intentions are good. So we're both after the same objective. We're just sometimes we don't agree on how to get there. And it's a difference. Yeah.
Do you find it's easy separating business from personal stuff, meaning let's say that you're on a date or on a family trip, does work get in the way?
As entrepreneurs, those lines are blurred to begin with, right? Like there was no I think it's very interesting to see things from my kids' perspective was hoping, because there are 2 parents that run and own their businesses, and they can't there's a holiday is still work, and work is still doing some personal stuff, and it's all kind of mixed up in there. I think it's important to disconnect, not just even as a couple, but as individuals. Like
disconnect from each other or disconnect?
Disconnect. No. I mean disconnect from work. I think certainly for me, I can't be as creative if I don't disconnect. And when I say disconnect, like as I said, you're never away from the business, but you need to try and take the time to have that quiet time alone to think. This is, for me, it's important. I don't get to do it as often as I would like, but I know I need quiet time alone, and I know that we need to work together without interruptions. But it doesn't make it easy to happen.
So you mentioned that there was a step before brands. Tell us about that.
So I, after the project with this Formative, I was considering going to Rwanda to work in the coffee industry, doing a similar type of thing in terms of, as this company was focused on how to make whole countries can become more competitive in particular industries. And then I got an opportunity to work in the tourism industry here in Jamaica with sandals resorts. So knowing that if I had gone to Rwanda and I came back and I was interested in economic development and industries that were leading to economic development, tourism would have been a natural one for me to spend some time with. So having had that opportunity off the bat, I took it. And so that's actually what brought me to L.E.A.R.N. I had the benefit of working alongside my friend, Adam Stewart, who was my boss and friend, in helping to create a new division within Sandals called Sandals Lifestyle, that as a brand merchandising, so people to come on their holidays, they want to take a bit from their holiday back with them, you both stay in some hotel, and you can buy the sheets and the band and the robe and stuff, and it was how do you create that type of opportunity for Sandals guests. I don't have a marketing background at all, that I'm really about, black and white economist, but it was so interesting to get into that branding and marketing space, and Sandals is the best at watching those for good reason.
It's interesting that you don't have a marketing background, because what prompted me to reach out for an interview was the Krispy Kreme saga that was last year. So I think sometimes marketing is a skill that it's not always the obvious marketing, the product placement, that kind of thing, but you just maybe know how to tell a story, or how to position things.
And execute, right? I think I have to give kudos to both Krispy Kreme as a brand, because it's created, that hype was there internationally. We just happened to bring it here to Jamaica. And the fantastic team that worked on that, from our operations team to and I started calling them names and becoming not too many, but our operations team, project management, and you've been Marvel.
Yes, Margaret's amazing.
She is amazing. And our operations team at England, Raphael, and everybody on our team that really executed that. So, I mean, our store manager, Michelle was at that store for probably about 48 hours straight because of the demand and not, she can't leave the ship.
There was, I think, we were just checking on social media to see how long the line would last, because there was a line for days, it felt like, maybe even weeks.
Yes. So. Yeah, it was really exciting to all of us, and it's such a feel-good brand as well. I mean, we love all the brands that we operate, Burger King, Popeyes, and Caesars, and now Krispy Kreme. But the sharing aspect of Krispy Kreme, and then picking up a dozen to share.
Yes, I've seen that. I'm carrying this from my office, or carrying this from my store.
It's all about spreading joy, and our other brands have their own niche, and the joyous niche of Krispy Kreme is really exciting.
So I wanted to dive into your journey as an entrepreneur.
Sure.
I know you spent some time at the Branson Center.
So coincidentally, back to while I was working at Servidos, I got invited to, and this is one of, as you know, how fortuitous things can be as an entrepreneur. You just have a conversation with it, and it takes you in a completely different direction. So I got invited to a function here in Montego Bay, where it just so happens that there were people from Virgin that were traveling through the Caribbean at the time with this idea of the Branson Center. They had set it up in South Africa, and they were looking as to where in the Caribbean they should have put it.
Of course, Jamaica.
So, that's what we were there to convince them of, right? So I was just invited as a guest, met these, and I offered, based on my background in economic development, hearing what they were planning on doing, I offered to help in any way that I could. And the guy said to me, okay, well, really what I need to find is a project manager. And he sent me the job description. I said, no problems, I'll send it up to my network. I'm sure I can find somebody that will jump at this opportunity. So I read it, and it was like a 6 to 9 month project, and it was to create the business plan and to execute and lead to the thing. Well, you knew this before. I did clearly, because when I read it, I'm like, this would be really interesting to do for 6 to 9 months, right? And so I went and spoke to my boss and Fred Alice Surfer and said, look, he's coincidentally was at the same function, so he knew all about it. And I went and spoke to him and said, look, can I take some time for 6 to 9 months to go and do this job? I'm really interested in it, and we are thinking it'd be good for Jamaica to do this. And he gave me his support, and he's like, I'm telling you yes to the 6 to 9 months, but I know that this is you, and you're not going to.
Exactly, like 6 to 9 months, you're not coming back.
So yeah, exactly. So I took the job, did the work as the kind of project manager to get the place up and running, and then they asked me to stay on as a CEO. And that, which I led that team for 7 years. I'm still on the board, and then I left to do what I'm doing now, and I'm still on the board. It's still very dear to my heart. We measured our success through the jobs that were created by the entrepreneurs that we support, so being able to be a part of that, and to really support entrepreneurs on some of the struggles that they were talking, and then a lot of that support came from putting them in touch with people who have been there and doing that, and kind of watching that exchange and seeing how a simple conversation or a simple referral could really open the doors for entrepreneurs. Was just, it was a real feel-good job, which was hard to leave, but after setting it up in the Virgin Islands as well, I'd really built a great team, and the entrepreneurs were benefiting from the program, and I said to myself, okay, now is perhaps a time for me to take on a different challenge.
Sure.
And, you know, I'm part of a family business, right? But as you can tell from my history, I was involved in the family business all along, and I know it's not very typical for Jamaica. You know, and I know you're sharing part of your story as a family business as well, and it's pretty much taken as a given that if your family has a family business, you're going to work in the family business. And I guess the part of me that was I almost avoided it for that reason. I don't like underlying assumptions, and I wanted to do my own thing, and I did, and I'm very grateful that my parents, and in particular my dad, who has really taken what my grandmother and grandfather started and taken it to a completely different level. You know, I kept on saying, like, you don't need me, like, you're doing really well on your own, and you have it all under control. So, and he never pushed me, I have to say, like that. And I know that's not very common with that.
That's certainly
not at all. He really said, you know, and I think he probably realized that with time I would come around. And I guess that time came where I said to myself, like, I got such joy out of creating something that didn't exist before, like, you know, taking it from idea to executing. And I just got to the point where I said, well, maybe the next challenge for me is taking something that already exists and taking it to the next level. And maybe, you know, I didn't think it was always as challenging as it's been, and it's a lot more exciting to start something from scratch. But you know, if we keep on doing the same things, we don't grow as human beings. And given my passion for driving the country forward through entrepreneurship, I just said, okay, well, this is an opportunity that's being given to me, you know, that affects job creation for thousands of jobs. So between ITEL and the L.E.A.R.N group, you know, we're probably looking on 10,000 employees from it, and that's a massive opportunity that I have to make a difference in the countries that we operate out of. I guess my goal is just to try to do it the right way.
Okay, so let's try to get 1,000 or 10,000 foot view of. So you mentioned over 10,000 employees. So
ITEL is a majority of that, right? Because ITEL is now operating in about 6 countries and has close to 7,000 employees. Within L.E.A.R.N Group, so when I say L.E.A.R.N Group, my father, Richard Lake, is served as group CEO before I took over the reins in January 2020, and the L.E.A.R.N group is really just a structure that I've put in place. It's not a structure, it's just a way of operating. So it's not
a whole interesting time to take over.
Relays until I get to that. He really had vision to start down right here, right in time for the world to fall apart. But so we were a family business that was started by my grandmother and grandfather, Lois Sherwood, and she married Sherwood after Lois Lake and Ronald Lake. And they started off actually with a furniture company, selling Jamaican furniture that competed with European furniture that was being imported. So they had a store on Orange Street that did very well. They were great partners. I actually never met my grandfather. He died before I was born. And but my grandmother, who just passed away last year, was a firecracker and an excellent saleswoman. And she was more reserved, I understand, and more strategic. Again, it was a great partnership. And they managed to grow that business substantially, and then decided that they were going to invest in real estate development. So they bought some land and had my grandfather having massive fun what he was going to do with it. And then unfortunately passed away from a heart attack unexpectedly when my dad was at college. And so my dad took over at that point in time, and basically his objective was to make good on my grandfather's vision for the development of this. And he did that, and that worked well. So then he went out on other development and another development. And then from that, we got, through the real estate that we were creating, we got introduced to the opportunity for quick service restaurants to put in a commercial plaza that we had. So it's actually butchery as the first wording. And that's how we got into the quick service restaurant business, which now is, so real estate and real estate development and construction was the first kind of arm within our group. That led to quick service restaurants, which were now over 100 restaurants between Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, for the Brides, Burger King, Popeyes, Little Caesars, and Krispy Kreme.
Wow.
And then that led to another arm, which is manufacturing and distribution. So we are making some of the products that are used in these businesses. So it's very vertically integrated by design from my dad, Richard Lake. And yeah, so it's.
I find that's a good way to keep one, it makes the company efficient. It makes the companies efficient because they work well together, and two, you get to keep more of the wealth in the group.
So during COVID, there's pluses and there's minuses, right? So the pluses are when it works well, there you're able to create value, more value by the sum of its parts, right? One of the challenges with it is that we're all brother and sister companies, and sometimes we want to treat each other like brothers and sisters, as opposed to clients and you know what I mean, right?
Yeah,
So a large part of my job sitting over the entire group is making sure that I'm making decisions that are the best for the whole, which sometimes will affect one group and sometimes we can, and hope making sure that
should be fun.
Oh boy, especially when there's family around the table. So yeah, I work with a number of family members that have been in the business for longer than me, right? Because as I said, this is new to me. And I'm still learning every day. Learning is important to me though, and whereas sometimes we are not aligned again in how we get there, we're aligned on where we go.
Yes. So I want to ask you, so I want to capture for all of those watching. So I've been an entrepreneur for 24 years, and I'm searching for breakthrough. And I think if you've been in it long enough where you understand exactly what I'm talking about. There's this place where you go from, I have a good idea, maybe I have a good team, maybe I have a few clients, and then you take that next step where we start to build some momentum.
Yes.
So I want to ask you 3 things that can help the entrepreneur watching. Well, 2 tips and then one specifically for the women who may be watching, because I think that women make some of the best entrepreneurs. I'll say this to my wife: if she was the face of our brand, we'd be a lot further. If she was more involved in terms of some of the decisions being made, I think we'd just be better. Because for me, I'm thinking ones and zeros. She is very creative, so the ones and zeros now, I may get boxed in and be linear, but she can really take us to that next level. So 3 things that you think can help to get you to that next step.
Okay. Well, I think with anything in life, you should start how you want to end, right? So when entrepreneurs are starting off for the first time, you're scrappy and you try to just do what you need to do to get by, but you'll get to a point where that's hindering you, right? So it's as silly as it might seem to some, to put some real structures in place and have some strong processes in place when you're only a team of 1 or 2 or 3, it will save you a lot of time in the long run, because you'll get to that point where you're like, I'll just give a perfect example. You get to that point to be like, okay, well, I need to get this financing, but I need audits. But I never thought that audits were important because we were just such a small business, and I wasn't prepared. So now you have to step back and take time to do that. Whereas you might have been able to jump on it right and make different goals. So I would say start how you want to end, and try to choose businesses that we think can scale, right? Because scale is really, if you're in it like I am, for the opportunity to create massive job creation and growth, then you don't choose industries that are going to be dependent on just you as one person. I think that, to me, the second part of it would be building the team with that. I mean, I had one of my ex-bosses, Richard Branson, taught me this well, which is like, find people who are better than you. Alex, there's no ego in that at all. Like one of the biggest, I think, what I would like to be able to look back in my career and say, whenever I stepped out of a role, that I was able to pass on that role to somebody within the company that I had, that was qualified and that I had investing time and effort into making sure that they were felt that they could take on that job. And I've been able to do that twice already. And to me, that's stepping out in a situation like that is...
It creates continuity, same thing.
Yeah, and again, it's just, I think sometimes Jamaicans are very proud people, and as I was saying earlier, but sometimes we can get caught up in our egos a little bit and not want for our team to shine.
Yeah, it's about the whole moving forward and not just
absolutely. So I would say build your team, knowing who you are, what you are good at, what you need support on, and don't be afraid to acknowledge that, because we're all human and we can't do it all ourselves. I guess the third part of that, and I think as we touch on the woman aspect of it, is like find, and when I say it, maybe it's also on team, but I was talking about team in terms of business affair. Build your team in your personal life as well. Choose a partner that will be supportive and encourage your dreams and aspirations, and tell me when it don't make sense sometimes too. Like be able to have that trust and have those hard conversations, and build a team at home as well. Meaning, I rely a lot on my family and my helper because to help with my kids when I'm all over the place, and it's a huge amount of support that I get from my friends and my family, and that if I didn't get that, I wouldn't be able to do it.
So I wanted to thank you just for everything that we've spoken about. I'm a big fan. I think I've said that before, and it's so interesting. You're saying you weren't sure that people even really knew that much, about you and stuff like that. But I've gotten so much value in speaking with you. I have one last question.
Sure.
So there was something you mentioned earlier in our conversation about not wanting to be labeled a philanthropist, right? So, talk to me about the why behind that, and just some of the work that you're passionate about. What drives you outside of?
And I think to me, and I know it's the first thing, the connotation is that with philanthropy for me is that it's more about money. And I don't like that aspect of it, because I think a lot of times it's not just about the money, it's about, and sometimes people need more time than they don't need money, right? My passion project right now is in education. I think I probably came up a couple of times in our conversation because I think there's nothing more important. And I do see it as a binding constraint to where we need to get to as a country, and also as both economically and as a society. I mean, I'm honestly really disheartened by some of the ways that we operate as a society right now.
Yeah.
So not being from Antigua, but having kids here and seeing that there was a limited number of high schools that provided various options for education for families that wanted in Montego Bay. And many families, as when I didn't have kids and even when I had young kids, I saw parents being split up where one goes to Kingston to carry their kids to school and one stays in Montego Bay. And I thought that, that not just me, but a group of us said, that's really wrong. Montego Bay is growing in so many different ways. If we were to break off from Jamaica right now, it would be a substantial economy on its own. And we're investing in hospitals, we're investing in highways, but we're not investing in education. And again, like I said earlier, like if it is not being done and there's a need, and you have the opportunity, gather together and gather like-minded people together to step in and do that. So my husband and I, as well as 3 other families, gathered together to start what is now Fairfield International Academy here in Montego Bay. And I'm the chair of the board there now. And it's a learning. I taught. I used to be the teaching assistant for Economics 101 when I was in grad school. But that's as far as I got as far as far as being a teacher. So this I'm learning a lot. It takes a lot of my time because it's a startup stage right now, and it's a startup stage involving kids. So it's complicated in that, but it's really rewarding as well. We have our first graduating class 2 years ago, and then this year we had our first Ivy League acceptance. And then since starting the school, a prep school was closing, and that would have been the 4th school that I knew to be closing here in Montego Bay since I moved here. And so our group got together and convinced the merger to happen. And so we've taken over responsibility for that. So we grew from 19 kids in year 1 to like 110 kids in year 3 because of that merger.
That's awesome.
But I think education is important. Like I mentioned, the job of a teacher is like no other. But the job of an entrepreneur is like no other because you have the responsibility of creating opportunity, creating jobs that then create livelihoods and create community for a nation, and it's not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah. So the question I have is, I wanted to look ahead, right? So imagine that your son, because you got a call from your son,
yes,
is looking up. So he's being interviewed, let's say 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Yeah.
And he's looking up at your photo. What would you want the legacy that you leave for him?
I think, it's more meant to think about what is on your gravestone, but I think we should live we should live each day thinking about how we want to be thought about when we're no longer here, because none of us know when that day is something somewhere. So I think I would like for my kids to remember me as somebody that was passionate about what they did, but not self-serving in what it is, and that I spend my time working about things that weren't just about us as a family, but caring about a community. And that we talk about our family values around the table because I do think it's important that God forbid something were to happen to you tomorrow. My kids are young. I would want them to be able to list off the values that we have as a family and have that as a thread to carry through in their lives. I would like to be remembered, and so morbid to talk about things this way, but I'd like to be remembered as somebody that used my life and my heart to leave situations better in whichever way. Business, in my family life, in the community, I just would like to be someone that had their life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. Bishop, and I really get to ask you to have another conversation because I think that there's so many things that we didn't get to talk about. I'm very excited by research.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm not somebody that does this thing often. I tend to be quite private, but I do really enjoy chatting with you as well. And yeah, thank you for it.